Hi, everyone. Welcome to Diana Prince Lives Next Door. Today's Diana Prince is Emily Paulsen. She is the founder of Electric Collab Brand Studios, and she has 14 years of experience with big name brands and startups. She's all about helping female entrepreneurs level up their businesses with top notch branding. So get ready to hear from a strategic thinker and ultimate hype woman. Emily, thank you for joining me on Diana Prince. So glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So I know that I'm going to do a lot of learning during this episode. Even though I do the branding shoots in photography, I have a journey with branding. So I'm so excited to get this conversation going.
I love it. I'm always down to talk about branding, so I'm very excited to get into it.
Awesome. Awesome. So why don't we just start with the basics for anyone who's listening and doesn't know what branding is? Tell us in the simplest terms, what is branding and why does it matter?
Yes, I think the word brand is thrown around a lot. There's really no good synonym or another way to describe what a brand is. But even though we use the term a lot, I think there's a lot of confusion about what a brand really is. And I encourage people to think of it as the first and lasting impression of your business. And what I mean by that, on the first impression side, people are often interacting with your brand before they interact with you or with your products or services. They're coming across your website, they're finding your social media, they're being referred to look at some of your branding by a friend or a colleague or something like that. So it really does form that first impression that helps people understand who you are, what your business is, and really guides them to either take action to engage with your business or not to. So it really does make that kind of critical, first impression with new people. And on the other end of that, the lasting impression, people associate our entire business with our brand. So if they have an experience with us, whether it's really positive or really negative, we tend to associate that with the whole business. So let's say I got a massage at Massage Envy and I thought it was really terrible. I wouldn't say to my friend, oh, I don't love Masseuse Jeremy at Massage Envy. I would say, I don't like Massage Envy, right? Like I've associated that one experience with the whole brand. So it's really the way people remember our businesses and reflect back and kind of form a whole perception of who we are. All of that is really done through your brand.
I like that example.
Yeah.
I really
I
do
mean,
like that
not to slam
example.
Massage
That's
Envy, but
awesome. My examples are typically, when I started my branding journey, I mean, obviously we all buy into a brand and we have that understanding of what a brand is, how to get those components together. And as a solopreneur is difficult
Mhm,
to understand how that relates at our level as small business owners.
mhm.
When I first started, although I understand branding from that perspective, I didn't necessarily know how to put it together. And I knew that it was something that I needed to control. But, how I got to my brand, it was just like I tripped over it kind of situation. Tripped over it kind of situation. But I want to go back to the explanation of it because we have a lot of listeners out there who may not be in the development of their brand yet. So let's talk about how a brand can set a business owner apart from the competition. Like
Mhm.
how does a brand help them stand out? We mentioned Massage Envy, Coca-Cola, so on and so
Mhm.
forth. Maybe you can just give us an explanation of that.
Yes. Yeah. When you have a really intentional brand, and I'll say too, the experience you just explained is so relatable. I mean, most of us go into business because we're really passionate about our industry. For you, photography, we become solopreneurs to do the thing that we're really expert in. But packaging and articulating what that thing is to the people who need it, that's a different skill set, right? That's really what branding is about. It's all about emotional connection with your audience. We all buy based on emotion. That's just natural human behavior. We justify our purchases with logic, but we really are willing to give up our money in exchange for something when it makes us feel something. And that's what your branding is designed to do. Everything from the things we naturally think of, like your company name and the logo and your color palette, that's all part of it. But it's also your positioning, the messaging, your mission statement, that brand hook that's going to grab somebody's attention in 5 seconds or less. All of those pieces, when you have them in place, those are the things that set you apart from the competition. I mean, think about, we were talking about massages. How many spas offer a massage as
Mhm.
a service? How many shops sell a black sweater? It's hard to figure out in a sea of services or products that may be very similar why would somebody purchase yours over buying from somebody else? And when you add in those brand elements, that ability to really tell your story and make people have an emotional reaction, that's how you get that attention that gets the first buy. And that's how you gain that brand loyalty over time because they've connected with something that feels more like a living, breathing person than just a product sitting on a table.
So, well, let's talk about that then, because now that I have that better understanding. So, then when we're talking about a business brand and a personal brand, we had just touched on that in the fact that we understand the business brand. We see them all the time, we buy into them. What's the difference between the two? Just the messaging, or is there another element to it that we're not seeing?
Yeah, so this whole concept of a personal brand and a business brand, I get asked about this a lot from entrepreneurs and small business owners because we see people who are kind of on the fringe of the influencer space, or they have a really big personal brand like an Amy Porterfield or a Jenna Kutcher or something like that. And those people, they've named the business after themselves. They're putting their face front and center in all of their marketing, all of their content. They're sharing a lot of details about their personal lives. So those are examples of powerful personal brands. But a lot of small business owners feel like I don't really want to be talking about my personal health journey or my relationship with my partner or showing my kids or like how much of myself as an individual do I really need to bake into my brand? How much do I need to be sharing and showing to connect with people? And the truth is, there's a middle ground. So it doesn't need to be all the way over in the Jenna Kutcher, Amy Porterfield space, but it also doesn't have to be like a Coca-Cola where we have no idea who is the person behind that brand. You can do something in
It's we feel the logo.
yeah, exactly. And now, that's a legacy brand that's been around. So we all have our personal taste with Coke and memories of Coke, and we buy Coke for certain occasions to go with certain foods.
It
So
gives you a smile.
yeah, exactly. And they've done an amazing job through the branding, but that's a business brand, right? There's not a lot of human personality when it comes to like any individual that's connected to that. So I think for small business owners who don't want to share every tiny little thing, but you also want to make sure that you are connecting with your audience and still maintaining that kind of small business entrepreneurial feel, you can do something that's more in the middle. And the best way to achieve that is to add some of these human traits, thinking about personality, tone of voice, values, what you stand for, what you stand against. Add that into the actual brand. Build that as a thing that lives separate from you as a person, and then it's a lot easier to still have that feeling of human connection, but it's happening through the brand's ideals and the brand's tone of voice. So that's not so reliant on you as an individual human.
But so let's okay, then let's dive into that a little bit
Hmm.
because that is I think that's where I particularly got stuck, and it is the marketing of yourself. And I think I mentioned like when I started realizing the importance of my branding, I literally tripped over it. I had this idea of what I wanted to achieve,
Hmm.
but it wasn't like until years later that I realized how all that kind of connects. And it was to your point, something that I had to like put down on paper on what that looks like and how to make decisions on what parts of me go into that brand
Hmm.
because it is that to me it's okay, it's a personal brand. What are the values that I'm going to set forth that are so crucial to the way I function that they have to be part of this? They have to be part of this brand because people are going to be doing business with me.
Hmm.
Those elements. And I think one of the things that we get stuck on is as particularly as women, we have our interests vary.
Hmm.
You could cover a football field with how many things we're interested in
Hmm.
and what parts of those are the most crucial that should be part of your brand, even if you're not the face of your brand.
Hmm.
What are some things that are just part of your personality, of your value system, that it has to be part of your messaging? Because that's going to also determine how you speak about that brand,
Hmm.
how
Yes.
you speak about it. And that's where I know that's particularly where I got stuck is that before I had a brand, before I understood the personal branding stuff, even though I know what I was trying to achieve,
Hmm.
I didn't have that organized into the person There was no person behind it. So all you had was this pretty logo that
Hmm.
I got wherever I got it from, that changed 10 times, by the way. A pretty logo and the stuff that we typically interpret as a brand and that I spend a ton of time on, but there wasn't a human element. I wasn't part of that brand. And I didn't know how to coax that piece out and make it part of that brand. So I love the way you differentiated it because I couldn't differentiate it when
Hmm.
I first started. Like, why do I understand the way Coca-Cola works, but I can't do this shit for myself here? So that's wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And actually, for anybody who's feeling uneasy about their brand, it is part of the process, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yes, it is part of the process. And as you said, it can be a journey, if you hire an expert, obviously things move faster. If you hire outside
Yeah.
perspective, outside help, also there's a time and a place when you need to kind of DIY things within your brand. And yeah, I think that struggle of trying to figure out, okay, I'm a really complex person, right? What things should I be talking about in my brand? What things should I be including in my content? And what things shouldn't I be including? I think a really critical piece of that is making sure that we're remembering the audience. So, the things that we put into our brand, this isn't our biography, right? This is a tool to drive our business. So, continuing to kind of fact check and make sure that everything we're talking about in our brand is related in some way to the work that we do and to solving the problems of our audience. That's the whole piece. So, I
Oh,
do think,
yes.
yeah, sometimes when people are doing their brand on their own, and this is just natural, like we get a little siloed in thinking about our side, like our authenticity and our personality, and what do we want to be talking about. And we just have to always remember it is about us, but that's 50% of the equation. The other 50%, like we
Yes.
need people to be captured by this, right? And feel really invited into this brand. That's how you actually get conversions. So keeping that perspective in mind of you and your audience constantly when you go through any brand work, I think that's critical to make sure it'll actually give you a return on that investment.
Thank you for clarifying that because that's a really good point. So then when we're talking about branding, you already know my biggest lessons learned. First of all, DIY'd it. I don't know that if I would have had somebody walking me through it, I would have, because it's basically to your point, we're so complicated. And I could just imagine how a rush of 10 million ideas would just come out and I would have scared my mentor or coach like what goes in it. But it was a mentor that actually helped me coax it out and she gave me the tools to organize it. But it takes some self work in and some reflection from my perspective to see what am I going to talk about, what's important to me. And just to make sure that we cover it, that's only 50%. There's a whole other side of it that you have to think about what your ideal client is looking for as well.
Hmm.
So, my biggest lesson was the DIY piece and also the fact that I just didn't have the DIY piece. It took me forever. And the fact that I just kept relating to the Coca-Cola and thinking that you can literally put that together on your own took me forever. But what would you say was your biggest lesson when you think of that or let me rephrase that. As a business owner, what have you learned that you think others should know about branding?
Yes. Great question. And I think my answer is all related to the experience you've had and so much of what we've been talking about. I wish I would have had confidence earlier to really lean into my own intuition and my audience's needs when I was establishing my whole business structure. And I think we're encouraged in the very early days of entrepreneurship, or even in the later days, if we're pivoting or we feel a little stuck with something, we go and get outside help, which is amazing. I've had business coaches, I've had amazing mentors. My whole business is coming into small businesses and helping, taking branding off of their plate and doing that for them. So I think bringing in that outside expertise is a huge benefit to make progress. But when we're leaning too far into what others are doing, I think it's easy to sort of copy what we think other people have had success with. And that goes down to like service structure and offer suite, the way we're kind of packaging our products and our services for people. And ultimately, when you do that, you just end up creating a business that looks just like someone else's, right? And the whole idea of this branding that sets you apart, that really shares your story, builds deep emotional connection that leads to big ongoing sales, you can't achieve that if you're kind of stuck in this place of just doing what other people are doing. So I think the way you break through that is to focus on your clients, focus on the people who you're serving, really honing into what they need, what they want, if there's a better way to accomplish something, a better way to serve them, a new way that you haven't seen anybody else doing, and then checking your own intuition to say, can I do this? Can I kind of break the norm? Can I kind of break an industry standard and come up with something that's truly fresh and original? Like that can be a superpower, right? To really take your business to the next level. And I think you come up with those ideas by just leaning into what you know as the expert and what your audience is telling you, and not getting too focused on other people in the same space and what they seem to be bringing to the market.
I like that. Uh, that is great advice, and I hope everyone heeds it because I think it's the key to your success is not to follow the pack.
Definitely.
So branding, let me back up a little bit because and we probably should have started this a little bit, but how did you get into branding?
Yeah, great question.
We got a little extra time. Let's get a little bit of story about Emily.
Sure. Yeah. So I've always worked in the brand and marketing space. I worked for big companies like Abercrombie and Fitch and the Wendy's company and organizations like that at the beginning of my career. I've been in the brand space now for 15 years. I've worked with small businesses and startups, and now I have my own business building brands for female entrepreneurs. So I think the reason I got into it in the first place, I've always been really fascinated by consumer behavior. None of us are immune to that. We're all consumers of something. And the science and the psychology around what makes us buy things. We work so hard for our money and then we decide to give it up for certain things. Why? And how do people differ in that, right? Like, why would you buy something that I wouldn't buy and vice versa? I've been interested in that type of thinking for as long as I can remember. And that's what kind of led me into that career path of branding. And then once I started, that fascination just deepens. And I think it's incredibly cool now, 15 years later, when I'm helping these incredible small business owners, a brand can really help you fulfill your business potential, and getting to work with really interesting, talented people and help them articulate all this unique expertise, this unique value that they're bringing to their space. It's like the ultimate gift to me to use all of this experience and help people really achieve their dreams with their own business.
So can you tell me something? Who decided to put the fragrance in Abercrombie Fitch's store?
That was an iconic decision, of course. It was done by their original CEO. But yeah, when I was there, I was on the team called Brand Senses, like literally all
Mhm.
five senses. And whatever we feel about Abercrombie, like it was a sensory experience, right? With the music and the scent and the lighting. So they really made it immersive, whether you're a fan of that or not. It was a cool place to kind of have my first foray into really professional branding because they take it super seriously, and I learned a lot for sure.
If you wanna talk about the power of a brand, I mean, that would be it. Anybody I find branding fascinating as well.
Mhm.
And, so I'm really happy to have you on board on Diana Prince today. Oh my goodness. I love talking about it and the psychology of it and everything. So I'm really glad I remembered to ask that question. So as of now, I think what I wanna do is that I wanna just give you the floor to see if you have anything else that you want to talk about. It could be anything in terms of branding, any advice that you want to dole out to any new business owner, and or a special offer that you have.
Yes, I would say my wish to everyone listening is to embrace the fact that building your brand can be fun. I mean, this is meant to make your life easier. It's meant to make running a business easier. So, a brand project, I think sometimes it can feel like this daunting undertaking, or people think, oh, it's going to cost so much money or it's going to take so long. And it can actually be really enjoyable to go through this because, yes, it is important, but it's like therapeutic to kind of unveil these pieces of yourselves and really dial into the people who you're serving and think about how incredible you are at the work that you do and why that is valuable and why it's special. It can be a really like a truly fun process just to go through the work of branding. And that's exactly what I do for clients. So if anybody is interested in just outside support with this, or maybe you've built a DIY brand and you feel like that doesn't really reflect the quality of your work now, or yeah, you're earlier in your business and you're building a brand for the future, whatever your individual case is, I do full service branding so that I ensure it's fun and you get a result that's really going to drive sales. And I'd love to connect with anybody.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So, right now, we're going to be closing it out. I want to thank you, Emily, for joining me on Diana Prince Lives Next Door. If you want to learn more about Emily and Electric Collab, be sure to visit her website. I have it listed in the description. And for anyone listening out there, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep seeking out extraordinary stories. We're signing off. Thank you.
Thank you.